The Galactic Integration Academy floated in the quiet space between three star systems. It was a massive station, built like a flower with petals reaching out in every direction. Each petal held dormitories, classrooms, and recreation areas for different species. The center of the station contained the shared spaces where all students came together to learn, eat, and hopefully become friends. Principal had run this academy for 62 years. He was a species that looked like a mix between a praying mantis and a tall, thin human. His skin was pale green, his eyes were large and black, and he had 4 arms that he used to express his emotions. When he was happy, his arms would spread wide. When he was angry, they would fold tight against his body. Right now, they were somewhere in between, which meant he was confused. He stood at the window of his office, looking out at the stars, and thought about the human girl who had arrived 3 weeks ago. Her name was Meg. She was 17 years old, with brown hair that she kept in a simple ponytail, brown eyes that seemed to notice everything, and a way of moving that made the other students nervous. She was not tall by human standards, maybe 5 feet and 5 inches, and she was not particularly muscular. But there was something about her that made other species want to keep their distance. Had read her file many times. Born in a place called Montana, which was apparently a region on Earth known for mountains, forests, and large predatory animals. Her mother was a forest ranger. Her father was a veterinarian who specialized in what humans called wildlife. Meg had grown up hiking through dangerous terrain, camping in areas where bears and mountain lions roamed, and learning to handle herself in situations that would kill most galactic citizens. Earth was classified as a Category 12. This was the highest possible rating. Most species in the galaxy came from worlds that were gentle and kind to life. Stable temperatures, calm weather, predictable seasons. Earth was none of these things. Earth had hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and volcanoes. It had deserts that could cook you alive and frozen wastelands that could freeze you solid. It had oceans full of creatures with too many teeth and forests full of things that wanted to eat you. And yet humans thrived there. They did not just survive. They spread across every corner of their terrible planet and made it their home. The Galactic Council had debated for years about whether to allow humans into their society. Some argued that a species from such a violent world would be too dangerous. Others pointed out that humans had stopped fighting major wars among themselves and seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. In the end, curiosity won out over fear, and humanity was invited to join the galactic community. Meg was part of an exchange program. She was one of 12 human students sent to different schools across the galaxy to learn about alien cultures and to teach aliens about humanity. So far, her time at the academy had been quiet. She attended her classes, did her assignments, and kept mostly to herself. But had noticed the way other students looked at her. He had seen how they whispered when she walked past. He had watched how they gave her extra space in the hallways, as if she might suddenly attack them. He had also noticed how one particular group of students did not give her space at all. Was the son of High Senator, one of the most powerful politicians in the hegemony. The hegemony controlled 37 star systems and had enormous influence in galactic affairs. Was a species that resembled large, muscular humanoids with blue-gray skin, ridged foreheads, and a culture built on concepts of honor and dominance. In practice, this meant that believed he was better than everyone else and had the right to prove it. He had a group of followers. There was another who was slightly smaller but twice as mean. There was a female with purple skin and a cruel smile. And there was a massive who looked like someone had crossed a gorilla with a boulder and given it a bad attitude. These 4 had made it their mission to establish dominance over the other students. They picked on the weak, they mocked the different, and they made sure everyone knew that they were in charge. The teachers looked the other way because of whose father was. The other students learned to avoid them. But Meg did not seem to have learned this lesson. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in the main dining hall. The dining hall was a large circular room with tables arranged in clusters. Different species required different foods, so there were multiple serving stations around the edges. Students would get their meals and then find somewhere to sit with their friends. Meg usually sat alone at a small table near one of the windows, eating whatever the synthesizers had created to approximate human food while she read from her data pad. On this particular morning, she had gotten her breakfast, a plate of something that looked vaguely like eggs and toast, and was walking to her usual spot when stepped into her path. He was big. All were big, but was big even by their standards. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with shoulders as wide as a doorway and arms that looked like they could bend metal. His blue-gray skin was marked with ritual scars that indicated his family status, and his yellow eyes looked down at Meg with open contempt. "You are in my way," he said. Meg looked up at him. She did not step back. She did not lower her eyes. She just looked at him the way someone might look at an interesting rock. "Actually," she said, "you stepped in front of me, so technically you are in my way." The dining hall went quiet. Students at nearby tables stopped eating and turned to watch. This was not how things worked. When told you to move, you moved. Everyone knew this. His eyes narrowed. "Do you know who I am?" Meg said, "Son of High Senator, you have been at this academy for 3 years. Your grades are average. You have been reported for bullying 17 times, but no action has ever been taken because of your father's position. You enjoy making smaller species feel afraid. Does that about cover it?" Someone at a nearby table made a small squeaking sound of terror. His hands curled into fists. "You dare speak to me this way? You are nothing, a primitive from a savage world. You should be grateful we allow your kind to attend this institution at all." Meg tilted her head slightly to one side. "I am not the one blocking someone else's path and demanding respect I have not earned. That seems pretty primitive to me." And had appeared behind now, flanking him like guards, was still at their table, watching with dull interest. "You should apologize," said. Her voice was sweet and poisonous. "Is very important. His father could make things very difficult for your people." "His father is not here," Meg said, "and is just a student same as me. If he wants respect, he can try earning it instead of demanding it." Moved fast for someone his size. His hand shot out and grabbed Meg's tray, knocking it from her grip. The plate shattered on the floor, sending fake eggs and toast scattering everywhere. Her drink spilled across her shoes. "Pick it up," said. "Clean the mess you made, and then apologize for your disrespect." Meg looked down at the broken plate and spilled food. Then she looked back up at. "No," she said. The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "What did you say?" The voice was low and dangerous. "I said no. You knocked the tray out of my hands. You made the mess. If anyone should clean it up and apologize, it is you." Grabbed the front of her uniform and lifted her off the ground. He was strong enough to hold her entire weight with one arm, and he brought her face close to his so she could see the anger in his yellow eyes. "You will learn your place, human," he snarled, "one way or another." What happened next would be discussed by students at the academy for years to come. Meg's hand moved in a blur. She struck his arm at a specific point, right where a bundle of nerves ran close to the surface. His grip loosened involuntarily, and she dropped to the ground, landing in a crouch. Before he could react, she had swept his legs out from under him. Was big and strong, but he was also top-heavy. He went down hard, crashing onto his back with enough force to crack the floor tiles beneath him. Meg was on her feet instantly, stepping back to give herself room. Rushed forward with a roar, swinging a massive fist at her head. She ducked under it, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to send him flying over her shoulder. He crashed into a table, scattering plates and cups everywhere. Pulled out a small energy blade, the kind that was technically illegal on the station, but that rich students always seemed to have anyway. She lunged at Meg with a vicious slash aimed at her face. Meg caught her wrist, twisted sharply, and the blade clattered to the floor. Then she drove her knee into his midsection, folding the in half. A quick strike to the back of her neck and collapsed unconscious. Had finally gotten up from his table. He was the biggest of the group, standing nearly 8 feet tall, and he charged at Meg like a freight train. She did not try to meet his charge head-on. Instead, she at the last moment stuck out her foot and let his own momentum carry him into the wall. He hit hard enough to dent the metal, then slumped to the ground, dazed. The whole fight had taken less than 30 seconds. Meg stood in the middle of the wreckage, breathing a little harder but otherwise unharmed, was groaning on the floor trying to get up, was tangled in broken furniture, was unconscious, was sitting against the wall, blinking stupidly. The dining hall was absolutely silent. Then Meg bent down, picked up a piece of toast that had somehow survived the chaos, and took a bite. "I am going to go get a new breakfast," she said to no one in particular. "If anyone else wants to tell me about their important fathers, I will be over by the window." She walked to the serving station, got a new tray of food, and went to her usual table. She sat down, took out her data pad, and started reading as if nothing had happened. The security officers arrived 3 minutes later. Principal was in the middle of a budget meeting when his assistant burst through the door. The look on Young's face told him immediately that something serious had happened. "What is it?" asked, already rising from his seat. "There has been a fight in the dining hall," said, "between the human student and Senator's son. His forearms went rigid. Is anyone hurt? And his friends are being treated in the medical bay. Bruises, a possible broken rib, minor concussion. The human girl is uninjured." Uninjured, against 4 opponents, one of them nodded, his own arms trembling with agitation. "I watched the security footage. It was over in less than half a minute. She took them all down without breaking a sweat." Dismissed the budget committee and made his way to his office. He needed to review that footage himself before he did anything else. He watched it 7 times. Each time he noticed something new. The way the human girl assessed her opponents in the first second, the way she targeted nerve points and weak joints, the way she used their own strength and momentum against them, the way she never once showed fear or hesitation. This was not a teenage girl defending herself. This was a trained fighter executing a combat strategy with perfect precision. When he was done watching, sat back in his chair and tried to figure out what to do. On one hand, the footage clearly showed that had started the confrontation. He had stepped into Meg's path, insulted her, destroyed her meal, and then physically grabbed her. By any reasonable standard, she had been defending herself. On the other hand, Senator was one of the most powerful beings in known space. His son had just been publicly humiliated and hospitalized by a human girl in front of dozens of witnesses. There would be pressure to punish her. There would be demands for justice. There would be political consequences. Called his senior staff together for an emergency meeting. Vice Principal was a species that resembled humanoid cats with silver fur and keen analytical minds. She had been at the academy for 30 years and had seen her share of problems. "The footage is clear," she said. "The human girl was attacked. She defended herself. End of story." "It is not that simple," said Dean Vortex, who oversaw student discipline. He was a squat, rock-like species known for their cautious nature. "Senator will not accept that his son was beaten by a human. He will want someone punished." "Then let him punish his son for starting a fight he could not finish," replied. "You know that will not happen." Head of security, a grizzled who had served in the military before taking this job, spoke up. "I have reviewed the girl's combat technique. It is highly trained, military grade, possibly special forces. How does a 17-year-old from a newly integrated species fight like that?" Had wondered the same thing. "I will ask her when I speak with her." "You are going to speak with her?" Vortex asked, surprised. Of course, she is a student at my academy. She was involved in a violent incident. I need to understand what happened from her perspective. And if Senator demands she be expelled, his arms folded tight against his body, then I will deal with that when it happens. For now, I want to hear what the girl has to say. They brought Meg to his office an hour later. She walked in calmly, her uniform still slightly stained from the spilled drink that morning. She did not look nervous or afraid. She looked like someone who had been mildly inconvenienced and was waiting for the inconvenience to end. "Please sit down," said, gesturing to a chair. Meg sat. She folded her hands in her lap and looked at him with those brown eyes that seemed to notice everything. "I have watched the footage of this morning's incident," began, "multiple times. I want to hear your version of events." "There is not much to tell," Meg said. "I was going to eat breakfast, blocked my path. He insulted me and my species. He knocked my food out of my hands. He grabbed me and lifted me off the ground. I defended myself. His friends joined in. I defended myself some more. Then I got a new breakfast and sat down to eat." "You make it sound very simple." "It was simple. I did not want to fight anyone, but I was not going to let them hurt me just because his father is important." Leaned forward. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Meg was quiet for a moment. "On Earth, we have a saying. It is a dangerous world, so you better know how to protect yourself. I started martial arts training when I was 6. By the time I was 12, I was competing nationally. I also learned wilderness survival, self-defense, and how to handle dangerous animals. It is just part of growing up where I am from." "Dangerous animals?" "Bears, mountain lions, wolves, snakes. My region has all of them. When I was 14, I was hiking alone and came across a mother bear with cubs. If I had not known how to handle that situation, I would have died." Tried to imagine a child facing down a large predator alone in the wilderness. On most civilized worlds, children were kept safe from any possible danger until they were fully mature. The idea of sending them into situations where they might be killed was horrifying. But Earth was not a civilized world. Earth was a... "I see," he said slowly. "And this training, it is common on Earth." "Pretty common. Not everyone does martial arts, but most people learn some kind of self-defense. And almost everyone learns how to deal with dangerous situations. Earthquakes, fires, floods, extreme weather. We have drills in school for all of them. Earth does not go easy on us, so we have to be ready for anything." "And his friends are much larger than you, stronger. How were you able to defeat them so easily?" Meg shrugged. "Size and strength matter, but they are not everything. Skill matters more. So does speed. So does knowing where to hit and when to hit it. Is big, but he has never had to fight anyone who actually knew how to fight back. He relies on intimidation and his father's name. When those did not work, he had nothing." Nodded slowly. He had suspected as much. Was a bully, not a fighter. He chose victims who could not defend themselves. Meg was not such a victim. "I believe your account of events," said. "The footage supports your version. You were attacked and you defended yourself." Meg's expression did not change. But Senator has already contacted me. He is furious. He is demanding that you be expelled and that formal charges be filed against you." "For defending myself." "For humiliating his son in front of dozens of witnesses and sending him to the medical bay." If his son did not want to be humiliated and hospitalized, maybe he should not have attacked someone. Meg's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it now. "I am not going to apologize for not letting myself be hurt." "I am not asking you to apologize for defending yourself," said carefully. "I am asking you to consider the political situation. Senator has a great deal of influence. If he decides to make this into a major issue, it could have consequences beyond just you. It could affect the entire human exchange program. It could damage relations between your species and the hegemony." Meg was quiet for a long moment. "Let me make sure I understand," she said finally. "You are telling me that because a rich boy's father is powerful, I should feel bad about stopping that rich boy from hurting me. And if I do not feel bad, it might cause problems for other humans who had nothing to do with this. I am telling you that there are larger forces at play here. Sometimes, for the sake of peace, we have to make compromises we do not like." "What kind of compromise are you suggesting?" Took a breath. "Senator has said that if you make a public apology he will consider the matter closed. No expulsion, no charges, the whole thing goes away." Meg stared at him. "You want me to apologize to the person who attacked me?" "I want to find a solution that allows everyone to move forward without further conflict." "That is not a solution. That is telling a victim to say sorry to her attacker because her attacker has a powerful daddy." "Miss." "No." Meg stood up from her chair. "I am not going to apologize. I did nothing wrong. The footage proves I did nothing wrong. If Senator wants to make this into a big political thing, then let him. I would rather be expelled than say sorry for not letting someone hurt me." His arms spread in a gesture of frustration. "You are not thinking about the consequences." "I am thinking about something more important than consequences. I am thinking about what is right." Meg's voice was steady and strong. "On Earth, we have a history of people being told to accept injustice because standing up for themselves might cause problems. We have learned that accepting injustice only leads to more injustice. The only way to stop it is to stand up and say no, even when it is hard, even when it is scary, even when powerful people try to push you down." She looked directly into his large black eyes. "I will not apologize. I will not pretend that I was wrong. And if this academy, or this government, or this entire galaxy thinks that is a problem, then maybe the problem is not with me." She turned and walked toward the door. "Miss, wait." She stopped but did not turn around. "I need time to figure this out," said. "Please do not do anything rash. Stay in your quarters until I contact you. Can you do that?" Meg turned her head slightly. "I was planning to study this afternoon anyway. I will be in my room." She left. Sat alone in his office for a long time, thinking about what she had said, about accepting injustice, about standing up even when it was hard. He thought about all the times he had looked the other way when bullied other students, all the times he had told himself it was not worth the political trouble to confront a senator's son, all the times he had chosen the easy path instead of the right one. He thought about what kind of leader he wanted to be. Then he made a decision. Senator's holographic image filled half of his office. The senator was an imposing figure, even as a projection. His blue-gray skin was marked with more scars than his son's, each one representing some achievement or honor. His yellow eyes burned with cold fury. "This is unacceptable," the senator said. "My son is in the medical bay because of that savage creature. I want her expelled immediately. I want her sent back to her primitive world in disgrace. I want her to understand what happens when someone crosses the family." Kept his arms neutral, neither spread wide nor folded tight. "Senator, I have reviewed the footage of the incident extensively. Your son initiated the confrontation. He insulted the student, destroyed her property, and physically assaulted her. She defended herself. Defended herself. She hospitalized him, she broke his ribs. One cracked rib, and he will make a full recovery. The same cannot be said for his pride, perhaps, but that is not a medical condition." The senator's image flickered with interference, as if his anger was affecting the transmission. "You dare speak to me this way? Do you know what I can do to your career, to this academy? I could have you shut down within a month." "Perhaps you could," said calmly. "But before you make any threats, there are some things you should know." He touched a control on his desk, and a secondary display appeared beside the senator's image. It showed the footage from the dining hall, starting from the moment stepped into Meg's path. "This footage has been reviewed by my staff and by our legal team. It clearly shows your son initiating a confrontation, committing assault, and then being subdued by his intended victim. If you wish to make this into a public matter, the footage will become public as well." The senator's eyes narrowed. "You would not dare." "I am not threatening anything, Senator. I am simply stating facts. If formal charges are filed against Miss, she has the right to a defense. Her defense would include this footage. The galaxy would see your son picking on a smaller student, knocking her food to the ground, grabbing her by the throat, and then being decisively beaten by the same student he was trying to intimidate. That footage can be suppressed. Perhaps in hegemony space, but Earth is not part of the hegemony, Senator. They have their own news networks, their own legal systems, their own way of doing things, and from what I understand, they are very protective of their people. If one of their students is expelled and charged for the crime of defending herself, how do you think they will respond?" The senator was silent for a moment, could see him calculating, weighing the costs and benefits. "What are you suggesting?" the senator asked finally. "I am suggesting that we handle this quietly. No expulsion, no charges. Your son takes some time off to recover and think about his behavior. When he returns, he will be on probation. Any further incidents and he will be expelled regardless of who his father is. And the girl? Miss will receive a formal warning about the use of excessive force. It will go in her file but will not affect her standing at the academy. That is not acceptable. She needs to be punished." "With respect, Senator, she was punished. She was attacked by 4 larger opponents who intended to hurt her. The fact that she won does not change the fact that she was victimized. The warning in her file is a concession I am making to political reality. It is not justice." Senator's image seemed to grow larger, filling more of the room. "You are making a mistake, Principal. The family does not forget insults." "Then perhaps your family should stop delivering them. Your son has been bullying students at this academy for years. I have a file of complaints an inch thick. I chose to ignore them because of your position. That was my mistake, and I will have to live with it. But I will not compound that mistake by punishing a victim to satisfy your wounded pride." The senator stared at him for a long, tense moment. "This is not over," he said finally. "I suspect it is not," agreed. "But for now, I hope we can move forward without further conflict. Your son will heal. The human girl will continue her education. And perhaps everyone will learn something from this experience." The senator's image flickered and vanished without another word. Let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His arms trembled slightly with the tension of the confrontation. He had just made a powerful enemy. Senator would not forget this, and he would look for ways to retaliate. His career might well be over. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had done the right thing. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. By the next day, everyone knew about the fight in the dining hall, the human girl who had beaten 4 attackers, and the principal who had stood up to a senator. Reactions were mixed. Some students were terrified. If a human girl could do that to and his gang, what might she do to them? They avoided Meg even more carefully than before, pressing themselves against walls when she walked by, fleeing from rooms when she entered. Others were curious. They had heard stories about Earth and its dangers, but they had never seen a human in action before. Now they wanted to know more. They whispered questions to each other. How strong were humans really? How did they survive on such a terrible planet? Was it true that they hunted predators for sport? And a small group, the students who had suffered under bullying for years, felt something they had not felt in a long time. Hope. A tiny named Chip was the first one to approach Meg directly. They were a small, rodent-like species with large ears and quick movements. They were often targets for bullies because of their size and timid nature. Chip found Meg in the library, reading from her data pad as usual. "Excuse me," Chip said, his voice barely above a whisper. "May I sit here?" Meg looked up, sure. Chip climbed onto the chair across from her, his ears twitching nervously. I wanted to say thank you. For what? For standing up to. He has been making my life miserable for 2 years. He breaks my things. He steals my food. He calls me names. Chip's tiny paws twisted together. I was too scared to do anything about it, but you were not scared. You showed everyone that he is not as powerful as he thinks he is. Meg set down her data pad. I was not trying to be a hero. I just did not want to get hurt. It does not matter why you did it. It matters that you did it. Chip looked at her with wide, grateful eyes. For the first time since I came to this academy, I feel like maybe things can be different. Maybe we do not have to be afraid all the time. Meg was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something, Chip? Of course. On Earth, I was not especially brave. I was not a hero or a fighter. I was just a normal girl who grew up in a place where you had to be tough to survive. Everyone where I come from is like me. We are not special. We just learned that if you back down from every threat, you will never stop backing down. That sounds like a hard way to live. It is, but it also makes you strong. And strong is not just about muscles or fighting. It is about knowing who you are and not letting anyone take that away from you. Chip's ears perked up. Will you teach me? Teach you what? How to be strong like that. Not how to fight, but how to not be afraid. Meg smiled for the first time since Chip had met her. It transformed her face, making her look younger and softer. I can try, she said, but you should know you are already braver than you think. It took courage to come talk to me. Most people are too scared. Chip sat up a little. Really? Really? The hardest part of being brave is taking the first step. You already did that. Over the next few days, more students approached Meg. Not many at first, just 1 or 2 at a time, but the numbers grew. They were the outcasts and the victims, the ones who had been pushed around and looked down upon. They came from a dozen different species, but they all had one thing in common. They wanted to learn how to stand up for themselves. Meg was not sure how to respond at first. She had not come to this academy to become a leader or a teacher. She had come to learn about alien cultures and to represent humanity, but she could not turn away people who were asking for help. So she started holding informal sessions in one of the empty recreation rooms. She called them survival meetings, and they covered everything from basic self-defense techniques to how to project confidence when you were scared. The most important thing, she told them, is to never show weakness to a predator. When something threatens you, do not run unless you have a clear escape route. Do not cry or beg. Stand tall, make yourself look as big as possible, and make it clear that attacking you will cost them. But what if they are bigger and stronger? Asked a named gentle stream. There were aquatic beings who had only recently developed the technology to move around on land. They were slow and awkward outside of water, easy targets for bullies. Then you find other ways to fight, Meg said. Use your environment, use tools, use your brain. Size and strength are advantages, but they are not the only advantages. Humans spent thousands of years being hunted by animals much larger and stronger than us. We survived because we were smarter and more adaptable. And more stubborn, Chip added. He had become one of Meg's most dedicated students, attending every session and practicing the techniques until he could do them in his sleep. Meg grinned. Yes, definitely more stubborn. There is a famous human saying, it is not the size of the dog in the fight, it is the size of the fight in the dog. What is a dog? Someone asked. A domesticated predator that humans keep as companions. You keep predators as companions. We keep lots of predators as companions. Dogs, cats, snakes, spiders. Some people even keep bears and lions, though that is generally considered a bad idea. The student stared at her in horrified fascination. Your species is insane, Gentle Stream said. Probably, Meg agreed, but it keeps things interesting. The survival meetings continued to grow. Word spread through the Academy's unofficial communication channels, and more students showed up each time. Some came because they had been bullied. Some came because they were curious about humans. Some came because they wanted to be part of something different. Principal heard about the meetings, of course. He heard about everything that happened at his academy, but he chose not to interfere. The students were not breaking any rules. They were not causing trouble. If anything, the mood on the station had improved since the meeting started. There was less fear in the hallways, fewer incidents of bullying, more confidence among the traditionally vulnerable populations. He even watched one of the sessions through a security feed, staying at his desk late one evening to observe. What he saw surprised him. He had expected aggressive training, military drills, combat exercises. Instead, he saw something much more subtle. Meg was teaching the students how to read body language, how to recognize threats before they became dangerous, how to de-escalate situations through posture and tone of voice. She was teaching them awareness and confidence, not violence. Fighting should always be the last resort, she told them during the session observed. If you can avoid a conflict, avoid it. If you can walk away, walk away. But if someone corners you and gives you no choice, then you need to be ready to defend yourself. And if you do have to fight, you fight to win. No half measures, no holding back. You end the threat as quickly as possible and then you get to safety. Is that what you did with? Someone asked. That is exactly what I did. I tried to avoid the conflict. I tried to walk away. But he grabbed me and lifted me off the ground. At that point, I had no choice. So I made sure the fight was over quickly. Were you scared? Meg considered the question. Not really. I have been in scarier situations, but I was alert. My body was pumped full of adrenaline. My senses were sharp. I was ready to react to anything. That is what fear is supposed to do. It is supposed to make you more aware, more capable. Most species try to avoid fear because it is uncomfortable. Humans have learned to use it. Switched off the feed and sat back in his chair, thinking. He had spent 62 years running this academy, and he thought he understood the students who came through its halls. He understood the ambitious ones and the lazy ones, the brilliant ones and the struggling ones, the social ones and the loners. He understood how different species thought and learned and grew. But he was beginning to realize that he did not understand humans at all. They came from a world that should have killed them. They had survived against impossible odds, and now they were spreading through the galaxy, bringing their strange mix of violence and compassion, strength and gentleness, fear and courage. Maybe thought the galaxy needed to be shaken up a little. Maybe they had all gotten too comfortable, too complacent, too willing to accept things as they were rather than fighting for things as they should be. Maybe the humans were exactly what they needed. 2 weeks after the incident in the dining hall, returned to the academy. His cracked rib had healed. His bruises had faded. But something else had changed, something less visible but far more significant. He was quieter now, less quick to push smaller students out of his way, less eager to throw around his family name. He still walked with his gang, but they did not terrorize the hallways like they used to. They kept to themselves, watching the other students with wary eyes. And they stayed far, far away from Meg. The change did not go unnoticed. Students who had spent years living in fear began to relax. They walked with their heads up instead of down. They sat where they wanted in the dining hall instead of hiding in corners. They talked and laughed and made friends without constantly looking over their shoulders. It was, by any measure, an improvement. Principal watched it happen with a mix of satisfaction and unease. Satisfaction because his academy was becoming a better place. Unease because he knew that Senator had not forgotten or forgiven. The Senator had been quiet since their last conversation, which was not a good sign. Men did not accept defeat. They waited, planned, and struck when their enemies least expected it. Did not have to wait long to find out what the Senator had planned. The summons came 3 weeks after the incident. was called to appear before the Hegemony Education Board to answer questions about his handling of the situation. The board was technically independent, but everyone knew it was heavily influenced by powerful families like the clan. When told his senior staff about the summons, their reactions varied. "They are going to crucify you," Dean Vortex said bluntly. "The senator has been building a case against you since the day after the fight. He has witnesses who will say the human girl attacked first. He has experts who will testify that you mishandled the situation. He has politicians who owe him favors and will vote however he tells them to vote." "That is probably true," admitted. "Then what are you going to do about it?" His arms spread wide in a gesture of acceptance. "I am going to tell the truth. I am going to show them the footage. I am going to explain my reasoning, and then I am going to let them decide." "They will remove you from your position," Vice Principal said. "Everything you have built here over the past 60 years will be undone." "Maybe, or maybe they will surprise us. Either way, I refuse to defend myself by throwing a student under the transport." Looked at each of his staff members in turn. "I made a decision that I believed was right. I stand by that decision. If I lose my job because of it, then I lose my job, but I will not compromise my principles to keep a position." The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Meg heard about it from Chip, who had heard about it from someone else, who had heard about it from a staff member's assistant. By the time the information reached her, it was accompanied by dozens of rumors and speculation. She went to see Principal directly. His assistant tried to stop her, but Meg was not easily stopped. She walked into his office and stood before his desk with her arms crossed. "Is it true?" she asked. "Are you being called before the Education Board because of me?" Looked up from his work. Word travels fast. "Is it true?" "Yes. Senator has filed a complaint against me. He claims I mishandled the situation and showed favoritism toward you." "That is ridiculous. You watched the same footage everyone else did. I was defending myself." "I know that, and you know that. But the senator has a different version of events, and he has the power to make his version official." Meg's jaw tightened. "What can I do?" "Nothing. This is not your fight." "It became my fight the moment grabbed me. And it is definitely my fight if you lose your job because you refuse to punish me for something I did not do wrong." Studied her for a long moment. He saw the determination in her eyes, the set of her shoulders, the readiness for conflict. This girl had faced down predators on her and bullies at his academy. She was not going to back down now. "The hearing is open to the public," he said finally. "Anyone can attend. Anyone can request to speak, though whether they are allowed to is up to the board." "I want to be there." "I thought you might, but I need to warn you, Meg. The senator will try to make you look bad. He will twist your words and use them against both of us. Are you prepared for that?" "I grew up dealing with things that wanted to kill me," Meg said. "A politician with hurt feelings does not scare me." Despite the serious situation, felt himself smile. "No, I do not suppose he does." The day of the hearing arrived. The Hegemony Education Board met in a grand chamber on the Capitol World, a room designed to impress and intimidate. High ceilings, imposing pillars, rows of seats filled with observers and press. The board members sat on an elevated platform, looking down at the accused like judges from on high. There were 7 board members. 4 were known allies of Senator. 2 were generally independent. 1, an elderly female named Sovereign Mara, was known for her fairness and her dislike of political games. Principal stood at the defendant's position, his 4 arms held still at his sides. Behind him, in the observer section, sat Vice Principal, head of security, and a small group of staff members who had insisted on coming to support him. And next to them sat Meg, wearing her academy uniform, her brown eyes watching everything. Senator was already speaking when arrived, laying out his case in dramatic detail. He described the attack on his son as unprovoked brutality. He claimed that had refused to punish the attacker because of political pressure from Earth. He suggested that the human exchange program was a mistake and that primitive species like humans should not be allowed to attend prestigious institutions like the Galactic Integration Academy. When the senator finished, the head of the board, invited to respond, stepped forward and told his version of events simply and clearly. He described the footage. He explained his reasoning. He presented the history of complaints against that had been ignored because of his father's influence. I made the decision that I believed was just, concluded. I stand by that decision. The board members asked questions. Some were fair and neutral. Some were clearly designed to trap him into damaging admissions. Answered each one honestly and directly, refusing to be baited into emotional responses. Then Senator stood up again. "I would like to call a witness," he announced. "I would like Miss Meg to take the defendant's position and answer questions about the incident." The board members conferred briefly, then agreed. Meg walked to the front of the chamber. She stood where had stood, facing the board members and the senator, with hundreds of observers watching her every move. "Miss," Senator began, his voice dripping with false politeness, "could you describe what happened on the morning in question?" Meg described it. The confrontation, the insults, the destroyed meal, being grabbed and lifted off the ground, the fight. "You claim you were defending yourself," the senator said, "but the footage shows that you struck my son first. The footage shows that your son grabbed me by the throat and lifted me off the floor. Everything I did after that was in response to his assault. My son says he was simply trying to get your attention. Your son is lying." A murmur ran through the chamber. "That is a serious accusation," the senator said. "It is the truth. Your son grabbed me with hostile intent. He lifted me off the ground. He threatened me. I defended myself. If he told you a different story, he lied to you. Maybe because he is embarrassed that a smaller human girl beat him and 3 of his friends in less than 30 seconds. Senator's face darkened. "You are very arrogant for a member of such a young species." "I am honest. If arrogance and honesty look the same to you, maybe you have been spending too much time with liars." The observer section stirred with reaction, closed his eyes briefly, wondering if Meg had just made everything worse. But Sovereign Mara, the elderly board member known for her fairness, leaned forward with interest. "Miss," she said, "you come from a Category 12. Your species has only been part of galactic society for a few years. How do you find the experience of living among us?" Meg turned to face her. "Honestly, it has been strange. The species I have met are so different from humans. You have technologies we can barely understand. You have histories that go back thousands of years before humanity even discovered fire. In many ways, you are far more advanced than we are. And yet you do not seem intimidated by us." "No, I am not." "Why not?" Meg thought for a moment before answering. "Because advancement is not the same thing as superiority. You have better ships and better computers and better medicine, but you have also gotten comfortable. You have forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight, to survive against the odds. When danger comes, you expect someone else to handle it. When a bully threatens you, you accept it because fighting back is too hard." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of board members and observers alike. "Humans are not like that. We cannot afford to be. Our world tried to kill us every single day, and we fought back every single day. We developed science not because we were curious, but because we needed it to survive. We developed society not because we wanted to, but because working together was the only way to keep from being eaten by predators." "And this makes you better than us," Senator interrupted. "No, it makes us different. Different is not better or worse. It just is." Meg turned back to Sovereign Mora. "I did not come to this academy to prove that humans are superior. I came to learn and to share. But I am not going to apologize for defending myself. I am not going to pretend that I did something wrong when I did not. And I am not going to let powerful people bully me into submission just because they can." The chamber was silent. Sovereign Mora sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you for your honesty, miss. You may step down." Meg returned to her seat in the observer section, caught her eye as she passed, and gave her a small nod. The board deliberated for several hours. When they returned, the head of the board read the verdict. "The Hegemony Education Board has reviewed the evidence and testimony in this case. We find the following. First, the security footage from the Galactic Integration Academy clearly shows that the incident was initiated by, who confronted, insulted, and physically assaulted Meg. Miss' response was proportional to the threat she faced. Second, Principal's decision to issue a warning to Miss rather than expelling her was reasonable under the circumstances. He is cleared of all charges of misconduct. Third, the board notes with concern the history of complaints against that were ignored due to political pressure. We recommend that the Academy review its procedures for handling such complaints in the future. Finally, the board commends Miss for her courage in speaking honestly before this body. Her testimony has been illuminating." Senator sat in stunned silence. His carefully constructed case had fallen apart. The hearing was adjourned. The trip back to the academy felt different from the trip out. Sat in his shuttle seat looking out at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. He had expected to lose his job. Instead, he had been vindicated. The truth had won. It did not always work out that way. He knew that. Sometimes the powerful crushed the weak no matter how much truth was on the weak side. Sometimes justice was just a word that politicians used to justify whatever they wanted to do. But today, justice had meant something. Today, a human girl had stood before a room full of powerful aliens and told them the truth without flinching. Today, she had reminded them all what courage looked like. Principal turned. Meg was standing in the aisle next to his seat. "May I sit?" He gestured to the empty seat beside him. She sat down, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the outside. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For standing up for me. You could have thrown me under the transport. It would have been easier." "Easier is not always better." "No, but most people choose easier anyway." She turned to look at him. "You did not, that means something." Considered his response carefully. "When you first came to my academy, I did not know what to make of you. I had read about humans, but reading is not the same as knowing. I thought you might be dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to the peace I had worked so hard to build. And now I think you might be exactly what we needed. Someone to shake us out of our complacency. Someone to remind us that strength comes in many forms, and that the most important kind of strength is the kind that stands up for what is right even when it is hard." Meg was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, that same smile that transformed her face and made her look like the teenage girl she actually was instead of the warrior everyone feared. "On Earth we have a saying," she said, "be the change you want to see in the world." I think it applies to galaxies too. "I think it does." They sat in comfortable silence as the shuttle carried them home. The news of the hearing spread quickly. Within days, everyone in the academy knew what had happened. How Senator had tried to destroy Principal and the human girl who had stood up to his son. How the truth had won. Things changed after that. Quietly from the academy, his father's influence had been diminished by the public failure, and there were rumors that he might lose his Senate seat in the next election. And stayed, but they were shadows of their former selves. The bullying stopped. The survival meetings continued, but they were not really needed anymore. The students who had attended them walked with confidence now. They knew they did not have to be afraid. Meg continued her education, attending classes, doing assignments, learning about the galaxy and teaching the galaxy about Earth. She was still the strange human girl but she was not just that anymore. She was a friend, a leader, a symbol. And in Principal's office, a new plaque hung on the wall. It bore a human phrase that the principal had come to appreciate. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Sometimes the best lessons come from the places you least expect them. And sometimes, when you are commanded to apologize for something you did not do wrong, the right answer is simply no.